She didn't just grow up in a complicated family. She grew up inside a version of that family that the entire world thought it understood. Cameras were always there, angles were always chosen, moments were always captured, but what people never questioned was what happened in between those moments. Because what you saw wasn't exactly false, it just wasn't true either. And now, after years of silence, the person who lived through it is finally pulling back the curtain. Not in vague statements, not in emotional hints, but in precise, uncomfortable details that force you to rethink everything you thought you knew. Before anything else, there's one thing you have to accept, or none of this will make sense. The show was not real life, not in the way people believed it was. It was shaped, trimmed, rearranged, and sometimes completely rebuilt to tell a better story. A more dramatic story. A story that would keep people watching. And that difference, the gap between what happened and what aired, wasn't small. It was massive. And the deeper you look, the wider it gets. Take something as simple as a wedding. It should have been one of the happiest days. Instead, it became one of the most defining and damaging narratives of her life. The episode didn't just show a wedding. It created a character. A demanding bride. Difficult. Emotional. Excessive. They even named it in a way that made sure no one could miss the point. Once that label was attached, it stuck. People didn't question it. They repeated it. They believed it. And for years, that version of her followed her everywhere. But here's what wasn't shown. Not once. Not even hinted at. While the cameras captured disagreements and highlighted tension, she was quietly tracking every single expense. Every day. She wasn't throwing money around. She was managing it carefully. She wasn't being unreasonable. She was trying to make sure people were taken care of. And the one argument that viewers laughed at, the one that made her look over the top, turned out to be the one moment where she was completely right. The food ran out. Not slightly. Not toward the end. Completely. Guests didn't get enough. She didn't get enough. Imagine that for a second. A bride at her own wedding, eating barely anything because the decision she fought for, the one that was mocked, was ignored. And after everything, after the camera stopped, after the episode ended, she and her husband had to leave and get food somewhere else because they were still hungry. That part never aired. That part didn't fit the story. And that's when you start to see it. It was never about showing what actually happened. It was about choosing what version of events would create the strongest reaction. If the truth made someone look reasonable, but the edit could make them look dramatic, the edit would win every time. Because drama gets attention. Attention gets views. And views were always the priority. But even that isn't the most unsettling part. Because editing isn't just about cutting things out. It's about rearranging them. Conversations didn't always happen in the order you saw. Reactions weren't always responses to what they appeared to be. Words spoken weeks apart could be stitched together into a single moment that never existed. And when you're the one who lived it, watching it back becomes something strange. Familiar but wrong. Recognizable but distorted. She remembers moments clearly. What was said, how it felt, why it mattered. And then she watches the episode, and it's like looking at a different version of reality. The same people are there. The same words are used. But the meaning has shifted completely. That's not a small change. That's a complete transformation. And once it's broadcast, that version becomes permanent in the eyes of millions. And here's the part that makes it even heavier. She didn't choose this life. Not really. She was a teenager when it started. 14 years old. Think about what that means. High school, identity, friendships, relationships. All of it happening while cameras are documenting everything and strangers are forming opinions. There's no separation. No private space to figure out who you are. Because while you're still becoming a person, the world has already decided who you are. And once a label is attached, it doesn't just disappear. It follows you. It shapes how people see you before they even meet you. It becomes something you have to explain, defend, or undo. And undoing something that millions of people believe is not simple. It takes years. Sometimes it never fully happens. What makes this story different now is that she's not just talking about how it felt. She's showing exactly how it happened. Step by step. Example by example. And with every detail, the version of events people accepted so easily starts to fall apart. Because once you know what was left out, once you see what was changed, you can't unsee it. And that's just the beginning. Because the wedding, as damaging as it was only one piece of something much bigger. Something that involved not just editing, but entire moments being built from nothing. Moments that looked natural, emotional, even spontaneous, but were anything but. And the deeper you go into that, the more uncomfortable it becomes. If you thought the wedding was heavily shaped, what came next takes it to another level entirely. Because this wasn't just about editing anymore. This was about creating something that didn't exist until someone forced it into existence. Something that looked real, felt real, and convinced everyone watching that they were witnessing a natural, emotional moment. But behind the scenes, it was anything but natural. When the decision was made for the family to separate, it should have been quiet, private. Something handled away from cameras, away from pressure, away from expectations. But that's not how it happened. Instead, what viewers saw was a goodbye. Emotional, tense, awkward, but meaningful. It looked like a family coming together one last time to acknowledge the end of something important. That moment didn't just happen. It had to be built. Piece by piece. Call by call. Conversation by conversation. And almost no one involved actually wanted to be there. That's the part that changes everything. Because what you saw wasn't a group of people choosing to come together. It was a group of people being convinced, pushed, and in some cases pressured into showing up. And at the center of all of it was someone who wasn't supposed to be responsible for any of it. She didn't just suggest the gathering. She made it happen. She reached out repeatedly. She navigated tensions that had been building for years. She spoke to people who were avoiding each other, who were hurt, who were done. And she didn't stop when they hesitated. She kept going until they agreed. Not because production demanded it, not because it would look good on camera, but because she understood what would be lost if it didn't happen. That's what makes this part so different. The motivation wasn't about the adults. It wasn't about fixing relationships or creating closure between people who had already moved on emotionally. It was about something else entirely, something quieter, but far more important, the children. Because while the adults were separating, drifting, and redefining their lives, there were connections underneath all of that. Bonds that had been built over years. Siblings who grew up together, who saw each other as real family, not just extended connections. And those bonds were at risk of disappearing without anyone even noticing. That's what she was trying to protect. Not the marriages, not the history, but the relationships that could survive if someone fought for them. And no one else was doing it. So she did. But even that wasn't easy. Because convincing people to show up physically is one thing. Getting them to sit in the same space, with everything unresolved, everything unspoken, everything still raw, that's something else entirely. And the emotional weight of that room was heavier than anything the cameras could capture. What makes it even more complicated is that some of the people involved didn't just feel uncomfortable. They felt hurt. Deeply. Walking into that space wasn't just awkward, it was painful. It meant facing people they had struggled with, people they had grown distant from, people they no longer trusted or connected with in the same way. And still, they came. But not because they wanted to, because someone made sure it happened. And what you saw on screen, that quiet tension, those controlled conversations, those subtle moments of discomfort, that was only the surface. Underneath, it was something much more fragile. Something that could have fallen apart at any moment. And in some ways, it did. Because there was something planned that never even got the chance to happen. Something that would have changed the entire tone of that gathering. Something personal, thoughtful, and deeply rooted in what the family used to be when things were simpler. A tradition that meant something real. She prepared for it carefully. Took the time to think about every detail. Chose something specific for each person. Not randomly. Not quickly, but intentionally. It wasn't about the cameras. It wasn't about the show. It was about creating one genuine moment in a situation that had become anything but genuine. And then it was stopped. Not postponed. Not delayed. Just removed. The cameras weren't interested. The moment didn't fit the narrative. It didn't create tension. It didn't create conflict. And without those elements, it wasn't valuable to the story being told. So it never happened.
Think about that.
The one moment designed to bring warmth, to acknowledge what mattered, to give people something real to hold on to was the one moment that didn't make it. Not because it failed, but because it wasn't what the show needed. And that tells you everything. Because the moments that matter most aren't always the loudest ones. They're not always the ones filled with conflict or emotion that can be easily edited into a storyline. Sometimes they're quiet, thoughtful,
Human.
and those are the moments that don't always survive in a system built around entertainment.
What viewers saw was a goodbye.
What actually happened was something much more complicated. Something held together by effort, by intention, and by someone who understood what was at stake even when no one else did. And the truth is, that gathering became something far more important than anyone realized at the time. Not because of what was shown, but because of what it represented. Because for some of them, it was one of the last times they would ever be together like that again. At the time, no one in that room fully understood how rare that moment would become. It felt heavy, yes. Uncomfortable, definitely. But still temporary. Like something that would pass, something that would eventually settle into a new normal, where people would reconnect, rebuild, and find a way to stay in each other's lives. That didn't happen. And the way it didn't happen is what makes this part so difficult to process. Because there was no explosion, no dramatic confrontation, no moment where everything clearly ended. Instead, it was something much quieter. Something almost invisible while it was happening. It just stopped. Communication faded. Calls weren't made. Messages weren't sent. Invitations didn't come. And slowly, without anyone announcing it, relationships that once felt permanent became distant. Not through anger, but through absence. That kind of ending is harder than a fight, because at least a fight gives you something to point to, something to understand, something to process. Silence doesn't give you that. It leaves questions. It leaves uncertainty. It leaves people wondering what changed when it changed and whether it can ever be changed back. And in this case, there are people who still want that connection, still hope for it, still leave the door open. But wanting something doesn't make it happen. It requires both sides. And when only one side reaches out, eventually even that effort becomes quieter. What makes it even more complex is that no single person is being blamed. That's what makes this different from the way it might look from the outside. It's not being framed as one person's fault or one decision that caused everything to fall apart. Instead, it's being acknowledged as something shaped by multiple factors: choices, environments, influences, personal perspectives. And sometimes those things don't align anymore. At the same time, there's another side of the story unfolding that most people wouldn't expect. Because while some relationships have faded, others have stabilized, strengthened even. The dynamic that once seemed uncertain has become steady, predictable in a way it never was before. And that shift comes with its own surprising truth. Because the person who once stood at the center of everything, the one who built an entire life around a specific belief system, has quietly changed in a way that almost no one saw coming. Not publicly, not dramatically, but in private conversations that reveal something much deeper than anything shown on screen. If given the chance to go back and choose again, he wouldn't choose the same path. That's not a small statement. That's not a minor adjustment. That's a complete reversal of something that defined decades of decisions, relationships, and identity. And it didn't come from a moment of frustration or temporary doubt. It came from something more fundamental: questioning, looking deeper into the foundation of what he believed, researching, learning things that weren't explained before, understanding aspects of that belief system that didn't align with what he had been taught. And once those cracks started to form, they didn't stay contained. They spread. Because when the foundation shifts, everything built on top of it becomes unstable. And what replaces that kind of structure isn't always another structured system. Sometimes it's something looser, more personal, more uncertain, but also more honest. A move away from strict rules and defined roles towards something that allows for individual thought, individual belief, and individual interpretation. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It builds slowly, quietly, often without being visible to anyone outside. And in this case, it was happening for years while the cameras continued capturing a version of faith that no longer fully reflected reality. That's another layer to this story. Not just personal relationships changing, but belief systems evolving. And not in a way that could be easily packaged into an episode or storyline. Because doubt doesn't create the kind of drama that keeps people watching. It's internal, subtle, gradual, but it's powerful. And when you combine all of this, the shifting beliefs, the fading relationships, the moments that never aired, the narratives that were reshaped, you start to see the full picture. Not the one presented on television, but the one that existed underneath it. A family that was never as simple as it looked, never as unified as it seemed, never as clearly defined as it was portrayed. And the person telling this story now isn't doing it for sympathy. That's what makes it even more impactful. There's no attempt to gain approval or rewrite history in a way that makes everything look better. It's about correcting something specific, something that stayed unchallenged for too long. Because when millions of people form opinions based on incomplete information, those opinions don't just disappear on their own. They need to be addressed, reframed, explained. And that's exactly what's happening here. When you step back and look at everything together, it becomes almost impossible to separate what was real from what was presented as real. Not because the truth is hidden, but because it was layered, edited, and reshaped so many times that the original version became difficult to recognize. Think about it carefully. A wedding that was framed as chaos, when in reality it was controlled and calculated. A goodbye that looked spontaneous, when in reality it was carefully constructed through effort and persistence. Relationships that seemed intact, quietly fading without any visible breaking point. A belief system that appeared strong, slowly unraveling behind the scenes. Each piece on its own might not seem overwhelming, but together, they tell a completely different story than the one people watched for years. And that's the part that stays with you, because it forces a question that doesn't have an easy answer. How much of what we see is actually real? Not just in this case, but in anything presented as reality. How often are moments chosen not because they are the most accurate, but because they are the most engaging? And what happens to the people inside those moments when the version shown to the world becomes the version everyone believes? For her, the answer is clear. It meant carrying a version of herself that wasn't entirely true, explaining actions that were misunderstood, being judged for decisions that were taken out of context, and living with a label that never should have existed in the first place. But instead of letting that version remain unchallenged, she's doing something different. She's filling in the gaps, adding back the parts that were removed, reconnecting moments that were separated, and slowly rebuilding a narrative that reflects what actually happened. Not perfectly, not completely, but more honestly. And maybe that's the most important part of all. Because the goal isn't to erase what people saw. It's to show that it was never the whole story. That behind every scene, every reaction, every moment that seemed so clear, there was something else. Something quieter. Something more complicated. Something more human. And those are the parts that rarely make it to air. So what you're left with isn't just a different version of events. It's a realization that the story you followed, debated, and believed in for years was only ever one side of something much bigger. And the other side? That was happening the entire time. You just weren't shown it.